So welcome back again. As you can tell, I love ringing that bell. So I don't need to do it, but I like it. But at this time, I'm really happy that my good buddy here, Reverend Ken Yamada, is going to speak for us now. And he's been doing yoga for a long time as well. But Reverend Ken Yamada, he was the former minister of Berkeley Higashi Honganji, which is, we've had interesting discussions because I never knew the difference between Higashi and Nishi. And he kind of, it was interesting to hear the difference. But he's also the editor at Higashi Honganji Shinshu Center of America. So he does a lot of writing, because he's a writer, and really he's great sharing the education, Buddhist education in his writing and his speaking. But we've known each other since high school, through martial arts. So I guess, we've known each other now for 25 years.
Why are they laughing?
You know what? I do that to see, because sometime, a long time ago, I used to say that same kind of joke, and then everyone's going, "Oh wow, he's only 38." Now it's like, now you're people are laughing at it. But why we're interested is he's a long-time martial artist. He's a 5th degree black belt in Wadokai Karate, and one of the co-head instructors here in Berkeley. And we just love talking about the martial arts and stuff. And so he has a unique perspective on all of these practices, and he wants to speak on the unity of mind, body, and spirit related to Jodo Shinshu, Buddhism, yoga, and everyday life. So thank you, Reverend Ken, for presenting us with your talk today.
Koichi, you could put on the first slide. Well, good morning, everyone. Good morning. And it's great to get together like this. Seems like this is going to be an annual thing. I didn't realize that last year. But, this year, as you heard, Bob and I have been friends since we're in junior YBA as teenagers. And we shared an interest in martial arts, and he's helped me over the years with my martial arts and his friendship. And so when he asked me if I would speak, of course I said yes, anything for Bob. But then I started thinking, well, what am I supposed to speak about? And so I thought, well, we talked a lot about karate, and Bob did kendo. And as I get older, my karate has changed. And in order for me to keep going, I had to learn to do karate in a different way. And I've been to Japan, and I've seen all these old karate teachers, and they're like boom, boom, boom. And I'm thinking, how do they do that? Because I'm feeling like my physical abilities are in decline, and I'm getting stiffer. And I realize that a lot has to do with body structure of the bones, of the tendons, balance, movement of the hips. And so I had an idea, karate, a lot of the karate moves and what I learned are applicable to yoga. And so I came here last month, and I said, Bob, I'm thinking about talking about this. And I said how, it's important to keep your good posture, and you bend your knee like this and the back leg straight. That's actually the basic karate stance, and that's warrior one, I said, what do you think about that? Bob's like, he says, that's really good. if you're teaching karate. But he said, you should know your audience. And so he said, why don't you talk about Buddhism? And I said, okay. So today, in less than an hour, I plan to attempt the impossible, which is to explain to you Jodo Shinshu Buddhism. Okay, and the title of my talk today is Our Spiritual Path, because what it comes down to is spirituality. And what is spirituality? Next slide, please. And just for fun, I'd like to take a survey here. Why do you do yoga? And I'm going to read each one and raise your hand if that's, and don't think too deeply about this, but just off the top of your head, like which of these reasons do you do yoga, right? Number one, for exercise and health.
You can only pick one.
Just pick one, okay? Oh, you're number one, okay? Yeah, you're number one. Okay, thank you, yeah. For physical therapy, say you have a bad back or tight hips or, anybody? Okay. For mental health. One. For spirituality. Thank you. All of the above? Okay, right. Or none of the above, or other. Okay, very good. All right, so that's good. Let's go on to the next question here. What are your priorities in life? Okay, what do you place the most importance on? Okay, going to work or school? If you're still working or if you're going to school, thank you. And going out with friends, having fun, your leisure time. Okay, we got a fair amount of those. Going to exercise or play sports, a few of those. Going to yoga class is your number one priority. Right. Oh, wait a minute. You got to save yourself for the last answer here. Going to the temple. Okay. All right. So that's good. It kind of reflects the way we think and what we think is important in life, and where yoga fits into all of this. And last fall I was here at the Jodo Shinshu Center for a minister's educational seminar, and I had the opportunity to meet Reverend Shokei Matsumoto from Tokyo, and he's an innovative, creative young Jodo Shinshu minister from Nishi Honganji. And he wrote this book, which has been translated into 18 languages, and the English title is How to Have a Clean Mind and House, or something like that. And but he has an interesting yeah, I should have used the English title of the book here, but the images on the Japanese version here was more interesting. But he has an interesting take on cleaning. He's kind of like the Marie Kondo of cleaning. And he said that, cleaning is one of the most pure acts you can do, because you're cleaning your environment. Everyone appreciates an orderly and clean environment, and it's something that's very constructive and good for your mind and body. He recommends doing cleaning first thing in the morning, and he said that if you notice that Buddhist monks and priests, they wear their robes when they clean. So he said cleaning is a form of spiritual practice, and it's a time for self-reflection, contemplation, and meditation. And so I bought the book and read it, and my attitude about cleaning has changed, and now you have a time to practice it here with karma yoga, right? You have your cleaning. And so that's how in everyday activity, especially one that we don't particularly like, can be transformed into a spiritual activity and practice. I'd like to share with you this, sorry, that's the book. Yeah, my slides aren't coordinated with my computer. I have to ask for the slide to change. Okay, if we can go to the next image. Oh, sorry, the next one. Yeah, because I moved them around on my computer. Okay. You may be familiar with this image. It comes from a story written by Shan Dao in the 7th century China, a Buddhist teacher, called The White Path and the River of Fire and River of Water. And the story goes like this. There is a person walking in a field alone, quite peacefully, when gradually that this person feels a sense of unease, and so begins walking faster and faster, and then begins to run and realizes that he is being chased by something. And then, sure enough, there are bandits, all kinds of bad people, wild animals, and vicious creatures that are chasing him. And then he reaches a river, one side filled with fire and the other side filled with raging waves. And he thinks to himself, there's no escape. I can neither go forward nor backwards. And if I stay here, I will die. And then he suddenly he hears the voice of the historical Buddhist who says, go forward. He still doesn't move. He hears the voice from Amida Buddha from the other shore who says, come, I have no fear. And then he takes a step onto the white path, and immediately he ends up in the Pure Land. So this is a very symbolic story. But now at this stage in my life, being in my 60s, I have several friends who are now retired, and they're asking me, when are you going to retire, right? And they're out having fun and traveling a lot. They play a lot of golf. They eat at restaurants, and they're really living the good life. And really, they're super busy, and they seem to be cramming all these activities into their lives. And the image of the river of fire and river of water came to my mind because it's as if my friends who are living this kind of life are being chased by something. And I think they have a sense, and they've told me that, well, they may have a bad heart, or they have high blood pressure or diabetes. And so these are things that are coming after them, right? And so before they can catch up and get them, they want to try to grab as much pleasure as they can. Okay, now go back to the previous slide. And those of you who grew up in the 70s may recognize this image, which it says, if it feels good, do it. And it's a bear scratching its back on a tree, right? But this is kind of the mentality that a lot of us have, that we want to try to enjoy the most that we can out of life, and that's great. There's nothing wrong with that. But if that's our only focus, I think something's lacking. And to me, I think to myself, well, if I spent my entire life, the rest of my life, chasing after my earthly desires, would I, at the end of my life, regret something? Would I be missing something? Would I feel some kind of lack of fulfillment in my life? And I tend to think I would, that I would. Can we now go to the next slide of, yes. Okay. One of the methodologies of Buddhism that the Buddha did was, and you heard this yesterday from Judy, was to identify, well, sort of to analyze ourselves in a detailed way, right? So to break ourselves apart, and in the case of breathing, like to notice I am breathing in, then I am breathing out, right? Of course, when we breathe, we don't think like that, we just breathe, right? There's no in and out, we're just breathing. But then when if we really want to focus on what we are doing and what it means, then we have to sort of break apart this act of breathing, right? In and out. And so let's kind of break apart ourselves in a very basic way right now. And we have an outside self and we have an inside self, right? And of course, there's only one me, and there's no outside or inside, but for the sake of raising our awareness, let's consider that we have an outside self. So our outside self is how we look, right? The clothes that we wear, the house that we live in, the job that we do, right? How much money I have, and I'm looking at my bank account. So these are all things that are outside myself. And I tend to think that we think too much about our outside self and not enough about our inside self. So next slide. This is the Tibetan Wheel of Life from Tibetan Buddhism. And it's kind of a crazy looking mandala when you first look at it. And basically we have 6 pie slices, right? And the top pie slice shows a scene like of a heavenly Buddha and people really basking in warmth and compassion. And then the bottom pie slice is hell. And there's fire, there's a Buddha right in the center that looks angry, and people are suffering in that hell. And then there's one that depicts fighting, one that depicts animals, one that depicts everyday life. These are the 6 realms of existence. And these are really not, some people may interpret this as reincarnation, but symbolically, really it reflects our states of mind, how we cycle through these different states of mind. And in the center are the 3 poisons, greed, anger, and ignorance, represented by a rooster, a snake, and a pig. And then that kind of devilish figure that's right above this whole circle represents death. And so this is really what's going on in our minds, like all of these different things, like in the back of our minds. I feel, to me, it's the anxiety of death. And but no one really likes to talk about it, and it's taboo to discuss death. You know, if you go to a party, you go up to someone, well, what do you think about death? They're gonna like move away from you, right? And like, I gotta go get a drink here. But can we skip ahead to like 2 slides of the Buddha? Yeah. This is actually a picture of a painting at the Berkeley Higashi Honganji Temple. It's a few minutes from here. It's on the back wall because this is Shakyamuni Buddha, but the historical Buddha. And I like to use it because this posture of the hand touching the earth represents the Buddha's enlightenment. But the Buddha is also sitting in meditation. And to me, this image reflects our inside self. because the Buddha is reflecting on what's going on in his mind, right? And so this is the most important self that we should see, because it affects everything else, how we view the world, how we act, what our priorities are. Okay, then if you could skip back one. Okay, this is one panel from the Tibetan Wheel of Life. It's come to be one of my favorite teachings, something that I didn't really think about before, but the image is of people in a boat, and this represents name and form, or in Sanskrit, nama rupa. And name and form is very important for how we perceive, experience, and understand the world, because we live our lives based on name and form. Like, in reality, everything exists together, right? But in order for us to make sense of the world, our human consciousness started to label things like, oh, there is a tree. We walk into a forest and we see this wonderful place, but then we start to differentiate different objects in this forest. Like, there is a tree, right? There is a rock. So we put name to form, name to form. And name and form is very important. It's like, I want to have fun, right? Well, how do I define fun? It means taking a trip. I see myself in Europe and drinking espresso and eating all this Italian food. And so these images and form are important to me. Okay, so skip to 2 slides, please. So what is the teaching, the Buddhist teaching, right? What is the Buddhist path? The Buddhist path is understanding Dharma. Dharma. So Dharma means, essentially means universal truth. By universal truth, I mean something that is true for everyone and true all the time, and that is always true. So this is differentiated from something that we normally think is true, such as, well, today it's cloudy and chilly. So that's true, right? But tomorrow may be sunny and warm. So that's not something that's always true, but something that's always true is the weather is impermanent, isn't always changing. Right? And, or gravitation, the truth of gravitation means that I am affected by the laws of gravity, right? And so are you, and so is everyone on this earth. So we accept these truths easily, right? Because we can see that they're true. But we don't walk around saying, I'm a gravitarian, what are you? So this is really what Buddhism's all about. It's not a dogma, some doctrine that we're required to believe in. It's trying to understand the truth about life, about ourselves. Okay, next. And so other dharma that the Buddha pointed out was the truth of impermanence, that everything is in constant change, that nothing is permanent, that the universe is impermanent, and most importantly, that I am impermanent. So this is, you might think, yeah, I get that, next, right? Next, okay. But do we really understand it, accept it, and live with this truth? But I don't think so, because if you think about the basis of our happiness, how we feel that, what satisfies our desires it's actually the opposite. The opposite. Right? We're searching for love, but we don't want impermanent love. We want a permanent love, right? And or if we get a job, we hate it if we get laid off or fired or have to leave our job, right? Or if we earn money, we want that money to last. We want it to be permanent. And probably the strongest desire that we have is we want our lives to be permanent. But the Buddha said one of the great truths about life is that everything in the universe is impermanent. So why are you getting upset, when the conditions of your life change and you're no longer married, or you no longer have a job, or you no longer have any money, right? Of course, life will be difficult, but deep down inside, if we really accepted the truth of impermanence, we could accept this change and move on with our lives. Okay, next. Another truth is interdependence, which means nothing exists by itself, that everything is connected. And if things are connected, if two things are connected, they're not two, they're one. And this leads to the idea of karma. So karma is the creation of events and actions that are related and interconnected. And so this idea of interdependence is, well, we look at Bob as our yoga teacher, right? And but he wouldn't be a yoga teacher if he didn't have any students. He's only a teacher if there are students, right? And we wouldn't be students if we didn't have a teacher. So we need each other. We create each other, right? There would be no student without a teacher, right? There would be no you without me. There would be no me without you. Right? So we are interconnected, right? And so thus we are one. We are one. And that's why I think it's really a great idea to bring us all together at least once a year into a yoga retreat like that, so we could actually physically feel and experience our community and sense of oneness. And we see each other on Zoom, although I never turn on my camera. But it's not the same, because basically I'm in my room by myself, and but nevertheless, I appreciate being part of a group that's online, once a week. Okay, next. And I want to talk about this idea of karma. So karma refers to the innumerable causes and conditions that create life. So I am the product of karma, right? That the fact that my parents met, that I went to a certain school, that I live in the Bay Area, that I'm friends with Bob, that I had an interest in yoga and martial arts, and somehow I ended up here, and you're all the product of karma, your own individual, unique karma as well. Which created you and which caused you to be here. It's not like, if we look at life in its entirety and we don't understand the big picture, we might think I'm here because I decided to be here. I decided to be here, right? But actually, that decision was the product of many various causes and conditions. which include you being born, and which include your parents having met, which goes back in time. So it includes innumerable causes and conditions. So if we can go to the next slide. And, this is a diagram that I just pulled off of a random website, maybe having to do with plants and biology or something, but I thought it really kind of showed this Buddhist teaching of interdependence and karma, in that we see a seed becomes a sprout, and that sprout becomes a small tree, which becomes a growing tree, which results in a more mature tree that produces fruit, which produces seeds and starts the whole cycle. So it's a unbroken chain of life, right? And you can't take out one piece of it, otherwise the whole chain will disappear. And so same way with our lives were created because of an unbroken chain. So all of this karma together, we are here. But it's not a one-way movement. So we see the arrows moving in one direction. We can easily point the arrows in the other direction. If you look at the top, the seed actually created the tree, right? The seed created the tree. So that diagram could go in the other direction. So again, it's a codependent origination is what we call it, which is another name for interdependence. Okay, and then in Sanskrit, it's called pratitya samutpada. Okay, next. So all of these things, there's this wonderful image called Indra's net. So Indra is a Hindu god, but Hindu gods appear in the Buddha Sutras because Buddhism and the Buddha lived in India. So of course, the Buddha was part of all of these different, lived during a time of all of these different beliefs. And so we find Hindu gods mentioned in the Buddha Sutras. And so Indra, according to this myth, Indra has a gigantic net that covers the universe like this. So this is Indra's net. Indra's net really symbolizes interdependence and karma. So you can find yourself on one little intersection of that net, right? And trace out, oh, these are my parents, and these are my grandparents, and these are my great-grandparents. Or this is the time of my birth. And like my parents met because of World War II. They were both incarcerated in Topaz, but they both left the camp. My mother went to work in Cleveland, Ohio, where she did secretarial work, and my father taught English to the military on the East Coast, and he took the train to see his buddy in Cleveland, and then met my mother on a blind date, I think it was. And so I can trace those lines. It's because of World War II, and there are so many factors that affect my life. And going forward, the most obvious one are, well, my children are there, but it's also my family and friends and all of these other connections. So this is really the big picture about our lives, but we tend to just think about ourselves, right, without seeing this whole universe around us. Okay, next. So Nagarjuna was a Buddhist teacher who was called the second Buddha. He lived in the 1st or 2nd century in India, and he explained, deepened, and clarified many of Shakyamuni Buddha's teachings. And he said, and he realized, well, people are getting kind of confused because you talk about interdependence, oneness, how I'm supposed to feel connected, but how can I feel connected? I mean, when I'm working, you know, I have a boss and or there are these beggars, I can't give away all my money because, you know, I need money to live and so how, but you say we're all one, we should all be one. And Nagarjuna said, well, there are two truths in life. We have our conventional or everyday truth, which depends on our conditions in life, our circumstances. And like I said, the weather is, you know, today the sun is shining, but tomorrow it may rain. This is our everyday conventional truth, which is relative and conditional and very limited, very limited. But what we are trying to understand is ultimate truth. This is Dharma, ultimate truth, which is always true 100% of the time. It's true 1,000 years ago. It'll be true 1,000 years from now. It's true on Earth. It'll be true on Mars. And this truth is infinite. It never ends. And this is and understanding this truth is to understand true reality, the true reality of your life. But the problem is, we only or mostly know this conventional truth. And we think that's the truth we should live in. And we don't see the greater truth. And maybe we don't even know there's a greater truth, and we think this everyday truth we live in is the truth, is the truth. But this is fine as long as it works. Right? But when we face a crisis, then suddenly it doesn't work, and we're confused. Why doesn't it work? Why did this relationship break up? Why did I get sick? Why did my loved one pass away? So next. So if we only live within this limited truth, that's like building our castle in the sand. It's on very shaky ground, right? And it could be easily washed away, especially by a wave of impermanence. So if we want to have a strong foundation in life, it's most important to understand and grasp the greater truth, right? Dharma, true reality, true reality. Okay, next. So I put together this graph just you know, as kind of give you a rough idea, but I want to ask you. So the blue in the bars represent how much control you have over your life. Okay, so the first bar is like 25%, the second bar is 50%, third bar is 75%, then we have 100%, and then we have 0%. Okay, 0%. Okay, how much control over your life? Again, I'm going to take a survey here. Young people may answer differently than older people. But let's see. Okay, how many of you would pick the first bar of 25%? You have 25% control over your life. Oh, okay. How about 50%? Okay. How about 75%? Yes. 100%? Nobody. Okay. And, you know, and in American society, there are all these people out there who want to sell you books and you know, seminars that take total control over your life. Take charge, you know, be the one in charge. Okay. All right. And then I found that I you know, like young people, they like to think they have a lot of control over their lives. And the reason why they don't have that, you know, they might be the third bar, and the only reason they don't have that extra 25% is because of their parents get in the way, right? But Shinran Shonin would say, would pick the last bar. And Shinran Shonin, which is like no, the self has like no control, which may sound disturbing, but Shinran Shonin says 100% of life is karma, Okay, and so you may find that hard to believe, but let's look at an example here. So the next slide. Okay, here we have a swimmer. Say, for example, it's Laura. Okay, so maybe you can answer this. But, and then it's hard to see, but in the way on the horizon is an island. I see a little shadow there. So, here's a swimmer in the ocean trying to get to the island, right? So what would be the most responsible for reaching or not reaching the goal, right, of getting to the island? Would it be the swimmer, the waves, the weather, or all three, or all of the above, or none of the above? Okay, so let me ask you a show of hands first. First, the swimmer is most responsible. Okay, a couple of hands there. The waves are most responsible. A couple of hands there. The weather is most responsible. Or all of the above. Okay? Or none of the above. Okay. Okay, so all of the above means karma. Karma. Okay, so everything, all of the causes and conditions are the result of karma. But the way we experience, the way we think, the way we believe is that, well, if I'm the swimmer, if I didn't make my goal, I would say, oh, the weather was bad, or the waves were moving in the wrong direction. I couldn't. But if I made it, I'm like, yeah, I made it because I trained hard and I'm in the best shape of my life. See, what is true? What is true 100% of the time? It wasn't true last week when the waves were bad, right? But somehow it's true today. But we believe, oh yeah, that's the truth. That's the truth. Okay, next. So this is what's happening. We are perceiving the world with myself, with the self at the center. Think everything's about me. Everything's about me, right? And so we have words for this kind of thinking, this kind of perception. And it's self-centered. I'm at the center, right? Selfish. Okay, next. So that when I put myself at the center, see, I'm a positive, so I'm the first, I'm me on the positive side. And then if I'm here, then you must be over there. You're separate from me, okay? And then I judge the world, what's mine versus what's yours, what's right, and I'm right, and you're wrong, or what's just or unjust. This is the way the world and governments and countries think, and what I want and what I don't want. So this is a mind of dualism, and this mind of dualism gives us problems. And it's a source of conflict. So as long as we think in terms of dualism, there will always be conflict, because conflict is based in dualism, and dualism naturally results in conflict because there are two sides. There are always two competing sides. Now next. Now let's look at the opposite, where we're looking outward at our connection to each other, to other things, to our environment, to nature, to our community, to our family, where the self starts to fade away, right? It's not so hardened and important in the way we live and experience life. We see ourselves more as a part of everything around us. So this we call selfless. And, when we're thinking less about ourselves and more about others, then we become more of a family, we become more of a community, we become more of a country, we become more of a citizen of the world. Okay, then next, and which brings us back to Indra's net, this way of thinking. Okay, and then next. So it's the opposite of dualism. So it's called non-dualism, which is neither plus or minus. It's not negative or positive. Right? So it becomes we, right? Instead of you versus me, it becomes ours versus mine versus yours. It's neither right nor wrong, or it could be both. We can see both sides. We are interdependent. We are together. Remember, if two things are connected, they are not two things, they are one. So this is the meaning of oneness. Okay, next. All right, so in Jodo Shinshu, we have this teaching of self-power versus other power. And in Japanese, it's jiriki. The first character means self, the second character means power, right? And other power, tariki, first character is other, and then power, right? Other power has also been interpreted as power beyond self. And I see it as like Indra's net, right? Where the self is less important than the greater whole, right? And the greater whole. Okay, let's see. And, like these terms, so if we can, next slide. So these concepts or these teachings or these dharmas, these truths that I just mentioned, the interdependence, impermanence, karma. Okay, can you go to the next slide? Interdependence, right? Next one, next slide. Karma, right? So again, I'm using words to describe something, right? I'm using words to describe something. But as a Buddhist teacher said, words are not the thing itself. Words refer to the thing, okay? They are not the thing itself, okay? So you may think, okay, those are nice ideas, but they're more than ideas, okay? Well, okay, those are good concepts. Well, it's not what's a concept? It's a word, right? This is more of a truth. So what the Buddhist teachers in the past, how they described it was, it's dynamic, it's active, it's a truth about our life. So they use this character power. It's power. So these truths are just the power of life, the power that's affecting our lives. Okay, next. So this is all like the power beyond ourselves, power beyond myself. I'm living within this power, right? And then next. So the focus of our Jodo Shinshu temples on our altars in the center is Amida Buddha. Amida Buddha is right back here, right behind the screen. And this is, I took a picture of the statue at the Berkeley Higashi Honganji Temple here. This is Amida Buddha. People think I pray to Amida Buddha and or Amida saves me, or I am embraced by Amida's compassion. But Amida's over there, as long as we're thinking like that, right? And but let's look at what's this name, Amida? It comes from the Sanskrit root mita, which means limit, and is a negation like none. So amita means no limit, infinite. And next slide. Infinite. There's no beginning, no end. Amita. Right? Okay, next. And then, our practice as Buddhists follow the three treasures, right? That we take guidance in the Buddha, which is the Buddha, the teacher, right? But the teacher is a name, but it's beyond the teacher, that Shakyamuni, the person. So what is it that's important? It's wisdom, right? It's the wisdom that the Buddha talked about. So I take refuge, I take guidance in great wisdom. Right? And then Dharma refers basically to the teachings, but what are the teachings about? It's about Dharma, but how do we understand, how do we come to Dharma? Through practice, through a path. But, I met a woman from Spokane, Washington. She eventually became a Buddhist minister, and she started out just having an interest in Buddhism, but she had no community, she had no temple. So she read books, watched videos, and then she had kids, and she tried to teach her kids Buddhism, right? And then she finally joined a temple, and she said, it's hard to be Buddhist by yourself. So the Sangha is most important, and I think Thich Nhat Hanh said the Sangha is the most important. And so this community is important. And a lot of people, they kind of downplay the Sangha part because they're interested in Buddhism, so they like the Buddha and the Dharma, but they don't have a Sangha. But the Sangha is very important. And I consider this yoga community as a Sangha. And I read something interesting that a Buddhist teacher flipped this idea of Sangha, because we think a Sangha is like, oh yeah, there's a Sangha, there's a Berkeley Buddhist temple over here, there's a Sangha, maybe I'll go over there and join the Sangha, and then I become part of the Sangha, that the Sanghas exist, and then we join it. But this Buddha said, no, the Sangha doesn't exist. It first expresses itself in you, because you have this aspiration to deepen your understanding, right? And so you and I naturally have come here, and we have naturally formed a Sangha, right? But it started in here. Okay, next slide, which you don't have to read this, okay? It's probably hard for you to read, but I've been talking about a lot of abstract concepts and ideas, and I want to sort of bring it back to earth. So I want to tell you the story, which comes from the book Everyday Suchness, which you may know. And this was really the first Buddhist book that I read when I was maybe in elementary school or something. A neighbor gave it to me, and I still love the stories. And this was written by Reverend Gyome Kubose, who was the minister at the Chicago Buddhist Temple in the 1950s and 1960s. There was a man who was intelligent, a community leader, very capable and very learned. His wife often felt inferior in his presence. When his eyesight began to fail and he needed help from others, he suddenly saw his wife's plight. He said to her, "I realize for the first time what you have suffered for so many years. We have been married almost 20 years. I was so stubborn. I had such a superiority complex. All your years of ill health were caused by my stubbornness. For the first time, I understand real kindness. The many services you did for me, which I never appreciated before." Both of them hugged each other and cried, a cry of joy. He was a completely changed man. He was enlightened. He was enlightened to a completely new world. He had transcended his small, petty individualism and was able to see and join in a greater world and oneness of all life. He found himself in a world of love, of friendship. Reverend Kubose wrote, "Enlightenment was not just Gautama Buddha's, but you too, individually, must find this new perspective in life, this new point of view in your life and in all things." So this is how this one person was able to go from thinking about himself to thinking about others and expand his awareness and appreciation of life. Okay, next slide. And Reverend Kabose wrote this, "Why do we go to the temple? We don't go to listen to lectures or to gain knowledge. We go for our own self-reflection and to deepen our understanding about ourselves. If we understand ourselves, we have no right to blame others. Rather, we can understand them. Only then can we find peace and harmony." This is what the Buddha taught. So normally, I think it's hard, we don't think out about the greater world. So the spiritual path really is about breaking out of this narrow world that we live in, that we think is everything, to see the greater true reality of our lives. Okay, next slide. So there is a Buddhist teacher named Rijin Yasuda who said this, "Humans live in a world constructed by names and form as their reality. This is not true reality, but rather a person's interpretation of reality. Humans function in and are concerned about the human world alone. They cannot function in a world that transcends humans. We are like silkworms who make cocoons and who live within the cocoons we make." Okay, next slide. So that's why we try to follow the spiritual path. So this is a picture of Prince Siddhartha entering the spiritual path, represented by cutting off his hair and wearing robes. Okay, next slide. Okay, in March, I had the chance to go to Egypt and Jordan. And it was a fantastic trip, saw the pyramids, but there are other great ancient sites to see, which are incredible. And it just tells you something about the human experience and human history, that these incredible structures were built 4,000 years ago. But also, Egypt and Jordan are Muslim countries. And so I got the chance to see Islam in everyday life. And it was also Ramadan during the month of March. And so people were fasting. our guide would fast during the day. They fast from sun up to sundown, so he didn't eat or take a sip of water like the whole day, and he's talking and guiding us in this warm weather. It's just incredible. And you know, like my group of friends, we had the chance. We went to there was a luxury shopping center in Cairo, and so it was right next to the hotel. We went there. There was a McDonald's over there, and so you know, one woman said, "I make it a point to eat at a McDonald's in every country I go to," and so she went over there, got chicken McNuggets, you know, and there was a seating area, and it was almost all full except for one table, so we got a table. And so she brought over the food, but I noticed all these people sitting on the table, they had no food. They had no drinks. They're just taking a rest because they're observing Ramadan, right? And we're over there with chicken McNuggets. Also, during Ramadan, people are supposed to practice acts of charity. We're in the tour bus, stopped at an intersection. I saw this guy on a little motorcycle. He stopped. There was a woman sitting with her child, and like a beggar. And he got off. He went over there. When he stopped at the intersection, he reached into the pocket, gave her a little bit of money. People, they're encouraged that during this time of Ramadan to think about others, to practice acts of charity. And as a normal course, Muslims pray 5 times a day. And you would hear this call to prayer. There are loudspeakers in cities and in towns, and that when it's time to pray, you hear this call to prayer. It's like a chant, a beautiful chant, like Judy did yesterday. And I would like to play a sample for you, so Koichi, if you can.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد.
So people hear this, and I saw people praying, like in restaurants, at the airport. They have a little prayer mat, kind of like a yoga mat. They put it in the corner. They sit in seiza, like on their knees, right? And then they do their prayers. Just imagine if we had, if we were a call to prayer like that. Well, it'd be better if you heard Judy's voice and not mine. But if you heard something like, Namu Amidabu, Nami Amida. You know, when the guide, he interpreted, he translated the call to prayer. He said the call to prayer is saying, come to Allah. Allah is great. Allah is greater than you. Remember Allah. Right? And he said, because people, they get lost in their everyday activities. They forget. And we need to be reminded. And wouldn't it be wonderful if we could be reminded like that? Okay, next slide. So here is an image of Amida Buddha. welcoming the dying to the Pure Land, and people think, oh, Joro Shinshu, yeah, it's about dying and going to the Pure Land, right? But and people 1,000 years, they would have an image of this, or they would have a statue of Amida with a cord in their house, and when people were dying, they would have the dying person hold the cord, right, so that Amida could take them to the Pure Land. But next slide. But Shinran Shonin said this: the practicer of true Shinjin, that is true faith, true awakening, abides in the stage of the truly settled, for they have already been grasped, never to be abandoned. There is no need to wait in anticipation for the moment of death, no need to rely on Amida's coming. And then the next slide. And Manshi Kiyozawa, a great Buddhist teacher who lived in the early 1900s, 20th century, said, without waiting until the world after death, my trust in Tathagata, which I interpreted as true reality, the true reality of my life, has already given me the greatest happiness in this life. So coming to an understanding about what the true reality is that we live in is the most important. And if we can go to the next slide. And people think, well, Jodo Shinshu, there's no practice, right? I don't have to do anything. But it's not about this kind of passive acceptance. Because we think, oh yeah, okay, Amida is going to take care of me. I'm okay, you know. But in the back of our minds, I think there's still fear, right, and anxiety. And we still lead lives where we think material desires are the most important, and these material desires are what I need to fulfill in order to be happy. If we think like that, if we get mad at other people, if we get frustrated, if we don't appreciate our lives, that's doubt. That is doubt. That we don't really understand, appreciate, or accept the true reality that we live in. And if we do, I think that results in a dynamic strength, a power within us, a courage, a confidence to lead our lives, no matter what our circumstances, no matter what our health, no matter what our condition of life. And we would live a life mindful, a life of introspection, a life of gratitude and appreciation. Next slide. You know, Shinran Shonin's master text is called Kyogyo Shinsho. And it's literally translated as teaching, practice, faith, and enlightenment. Gyo. Kyo is teaching. Gyo is practice. But the great scholar D.T. Suzuki, he translated the Kyogyo Shinsho. And next slide. And he interpreted Gyo as true living, the teaching of the true teaching, living, faith, and realization, the true living. Are we truly living? Or are we just living in our own cocoon? Next slide. At service, we say the three treasures. And at the beginning of the treat, where I take guidance in the Buddha, or I go to the Buddha for refuge, or I go to the Dharma for refuge, I go to the Sangha for refuge, right? But before we say that, there are these words. Difficult is it to receive life in human form. Now we are living it. Difficult is it to hear the Buddha Dharma. Now we hear it. If we do not receive awakening in the present life, then in what life can we hope to receive it? If not in this life, then in what life? If not now, then when? Next slide. So we are standing on this shore, the shore of samsara, which is this life, the life of ocean, the ocean of birth and death, the world that with our ups and downs. And to reach the shore of nirvana, which is wisdom, which is the land of peace and bliss. There's the path. But we have to step onto the path to get there. We have to take that step. We have to follow the path. And this is what I think the spiritual journey is all about. And this is what I encourage each of you to follow. And doing yoga is one of the great ways of following that path and going to the temple and listening to the Dharma should be primary. Thank you very much. Please join me in Gassho. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu.